Oshi Saturday. Oshi Saturday. Oshi Saturday.
Did I leave the camera on? That's crazy, dude. We're recording. No, I knew that. No. Like, I meant to leave this on because I was just like, you know how like sometimes you leave your camera on like when you're just like cleaning the house or something and like something totally embarrassing happens, one of them viral fail videos, you trip over a vacuum cleaner or something like that, you know? Oh man, I know this must look like totally insane, but hey, what's up? Unrested here, and I've left my camera on. You know, like, if you're like cleaning the house or something and you leave it on and you catch some really embarrassing stuff, let me tell you, like right now. Yeah. Crazy stuff happened tonight, let me tell you. Just out on the town, having a good time, playing a little game called, well, you know what this thing is for, Stab Your It. And, you know, I was just out. You probably wondered about this, why I was out with this. I mean, it's just like, you know, playing a little game of Stab Your It. You know, easy little game. It's kind of like, you know, you ever play hide and seek with your friends? Well, this is kind of like hide and seek with society, but they don't know they're playing. Totally okay, I'm pretty sure. And, you know, the best part about it, the look on their face when they do finally find out that they're playing, it's just, you know, priceless with a capital P, let me tell you. Priceless. So with a capital P, if you know what I mean. But anyway, what I'm just ask you to do is go ahead, just put the phone down real quick. Just can you put the phone down? And I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to just go ahead and get the phone, just put it down, like hang it up. Cool, thanks, man. There's like no point in contacting anybody. Tonight, let's get ready for some more creepy clips from the dark belly of the deep web and dig dark and deep into the guts of the deepest dark fibers that surround us with the creepy cuts that intrigue us. I left the camera on, I'm really sorry, I'm here shirtless and this must look really crazy, but it's a perfect time to go ahead and just kick off Osoroshii Saturday tonight. So, what I'd like to go ahead and do is just give a shout out to all the great people who helped me out tonight. You guys are awesome for sending your stories over, donating them on to jvloggers.com, that's awesome. Anyway, I want to go ahead and just tell you, sit down, relax, you know, you don't even need to tape your arms to the chair that you're sitting in, you can just, like, grab a cup of tea or something and relax and just get ready for another Osoroshii Saturday. One thing I find strange that everybody who knows about the nuclear bombing of Japan knows all about Hiroshima. If not the most famous place in the world for the atomic bomb, then what place is? But why does nobody ever talk about Nagasaki? Nagasaki was just as cruelly hit, destroyed, and suffered just as much as Hiroshima. Well, this next story talks about some of the suffering those people went through and the shadows of the ghosts left behind. I was on a business trip and I ended up staying in a hotel in Nagasaki. It was only for one night since I had a conference for work. It looked refurbished, but you could tell it was old. My friend warned me a lot of people were killed here, and they died by fire during bombings during World War II. Some guests staying at the hotel had talked about encountering some pretty weird occurrences. Before the fire, the hotel was said to be a jail or maybe a mental institution. I didn't really care that much since I wasn't staying very long and I'm not really a believer in the supernatural. That night I put myself to sleep with a little bit of vodka. Work hadn't been going so well and the meeting I was going to tomorrow was making me a bit nervous. I woke up after I heard a huge bang at the door. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was disoriented from all the drinking I had been doing, but the noise was persistent. Bang, 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 bang. Someone wouldn't stop knocking on the door. I'm sleeping! What time do you think it is? I yelled back.
Get me out of here! Get me out of here!
I thought someone was drunk, so I just ignored whoever was behind the door. It sounded like some drunk oyaji or old man. But then I realized it couldn't be a drunk man. As the scream grew louder, the content of the yelling seemed to be way off from something a drunken person would babble on about. Not only that, there were several more people now yelling at the door.
I'm burning in here! I'm burning, let me out of here! Are you letting us die like this?
The people sounded angry and pleading at the same time. I never felt so afraid in my life. I hid under the covers, hoping the noise would go away. The next morning, I told my friend about the incident. The same friend who had warned me about staying at the hotel. After I told him the story, we looked at each other and exchanged glances. It was a painful glance that knew we had both seen the same thing when each of us had stayed there on separate occasions. We had heard and seen and felt the fear of those who had suffered pain during the burnings and been killed during the bombings of Nagasaki. I'm just happy that I was on the other side of the door, I said. If those angry ghosts were in the room, who knows what they would do? My friend nodded, but paused to think for a second. But if the ghost said let me out, doesn't that mean they were in the same room as you, he said? I froze. I realized I had spent the night in a room filled with ghosts. I was having problems sleeping at night, and I was going through what the Japanese call kanashibari. For those of you who don't know, kanashibari is the equivalent to the night hag or sleep paralysis. I think a lot about it had to do with me moving out of my old apartment and into a new one. I wanted to stay at a more upscale place so I could bring my friends over. There was nothing wrong with my new place, but I hadn't had kanashibari until I had moved in there. Kanashibari is a phenomenon where your body won't move. It is quite common in Japan. Many Japanese people are said to have experienced it. It is said to be caused by the supernatural. My kanashibari got worse, and I realized every time I felt my body going numb in bed, I could see someone standing in the corner of the room. I can't move, talk, or do anything during kanashibari, so I just moved my eyes to glance over at the corner. It's a man, and he's not someone from this world. He seems quite content standing and staring at me. At first I was annoyed and scared of this ghost, but then I realized he doesn't do anything. He just causes my kanashibari and stares. Soon, I fall back asleep and wake up the next day. I thought it was harmless at first until months had passed. My body was weak now and I was losing weight.
because of my loss of appetite. My hair was starting to thin out. I always had dark circles under my eyes. When I went back home during a weekend, my mother made me go to the hospital. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong, so I told her about the ghost that lives in my apartment. She was furious. We went directly to a temple together and told the monk about my story. He told me to pray during my kanashibara. In my head, instead of thinking about how to go back to sleep, just think about praying, he said. Repeat this. Namu Dai Da Butu, Namu Dai Da Butu are the chants for my prayers. When I went back to the apartment, I felt a chill. I felt like something was angry that I left for a few days. Before, this ghost wasn't much of a threat, but soon I realized there might be something more than just a man's ghost in here. That night, my kanashibari happened once more. Soon, as my body couldn't move, I saw the ghost in the corner of the room. I assumed that the ghost will always stay there, but it turns out he wouldn't tonight. He took another step, and then another step, and then another. When he was close enough, I could see his face. There was something very wrong about his face. It was way past angry. It was more like insane, or on the edge of going into a frenzy. I started to pray, and I prayed as fast as I could. Namu Dai Da Butu, Namu Dai Da Butu, Namu Dai Da Butu. I kept on going and going. The ghost seemed to notice I was praying, and he started to twist his face and let out a big scream like he was in pain. After a minute, he was gone. I kept on praying for a few minutes, but soon I realized everything was okay. That's when I heard somebody say,
"Do you think praying helps?"
The words came from right beside me, followed by a deep, low laugh. I fainted. The next morning, I moved out of the apartment as soon as possible. I'm never going back there again.
Our next story is a story very close to my heart, a story that comes from my wife. During college, she was experiencing a few supernatural experiences in the apartment complex that she stayed in Hokkaido. It began one night when she felt very cold black hair rushing across her body as she slept, as though a girl was laying her hair across her and sweeping it. Later, she had heard down at a cosmetologist place below her apartment, which was connected to the building, about some ghost that had wandered out into the snow due to the fact that so many people had died during the harsh winters around this countryside area that she lived in and went to school in. Later, one time her electricity went out and all the heat and everything cut out of her building, which can turn deadly in Hokkaido due to the fact of how cold it can possibly get. We're talking Russia levels there when it gets cold. So, of course, right away she gave the landlord a call. She came on over, and she was already on the way with an electrician when she had called. So she was on top of things, luckily. She was going to take care of her tenants. While she was there, though, she went around checking on each person, making sure they're okay, they're not freezing, do they need blankets, do they need some hot food, maybe a hot cup of coffee. Good landlady, let me tell you. But when she encountered my wife decided it was time to finally ask about the entity she had felt in her apartment. It was at this time that, after she described the hair rushing across her body while she lay in bed, that the woman took a deep sigh, remorseful, regretful, and possibly even a little frightened herself of the history behind that area, which she hadn't told many of the tenants about. Now, by Japanese law, you don't necessarily have to tell people about supposed hauntings within an apartment. Now, if a person has committed suicide in that apartment, then you do, by law, need to tell. But most times, even if there is some sort of haunting or ghostly presence, most landlords will tell. So she felt obligated. The story goes like this. 1930s Japan. A woman, her husband, and her child are inside the same apartment complex. Nonetheless, it did keep people alive and well, even in the very harsh Hokkaido winters. She was having a bit of a fight, a bit of a tiff, if you will, with her husband that escalated to the point that she was thrown out of her house by him. A cruel and unusually mean man. He threw both her and the daughter out so that he could drink sake by himself and not have to share any of the warm food his wife had just cooked. Not a good person, let's put it that way. Outside, she began to panic. She had been thrown out without a coat, a jacket, or even very heavy clothing. Possibly just a long sleeve button-up, and her daughter as well. How would she survive outside for any amount of time? Well, she hoped her husband would let her back in, but an hour or two of banging on the door proved that to be wrong. Her best bet was to try and make it to the center of town, which was, give or take, about 20 kilometers away. So she had a bit of a trip ahead of her. Her and her daughter had to trudge through the knee-high snow and next to nothing, trying to survive the harsh coldness of winter. She got to about halfway and they were shaking unbelievably hard. The daughter seemed as though she couldn't go on anymore, and the woman was desperate for a way to keep her poor daughter warm. Starting a fire was impossible due to the fact that all the wood around them would be wet, and the fact that they didn't even have matches of flint or anything to spark a flame. She decided the only thing she could do is take the fish knife that she had since she was a fisherman's wife, cut pieces of her hair and stuff it between the daughter's clothes in order to keep her warm, just like you would with newspaper or even pieces of cloth. She cut little pieces at a time, stuffing in more and more, and as the extreme cold got worse and worse, she would add a little bit more. They were still about 5 kilometers away from the center of town when she was reaching a point herself where she could barely walk normal without shaking uncontrollably. She scratched the last bit of hair off of her head, stuffed it in, and told her daughter, try to go on, make it, find someone who can help you, and then worry about coming back for me. Well, the daughter did make it to town that day, but by the time they got back for the mother, all they found was a bald corpse, unfortunately. Husband was later arrested and actually put to death for unnatural cruelty and, of course, his incredibly horrible disposition. Unfortunately, the woman was soon forgotten, as later that apartment complex became abandoned and wasn't again refurbished until way after World War II. What finally happened in the end was that woman constantly had been coming back, not only looking for her daughter, but looking for the hair she had lost. Those locks that she had felt run across her while my wife lay in bed were actually her picking up locks of hair and trying to place them back on her hair in futility. A very, very creepy tale, indeed. Our next story is another one from my good friend Softy Papa Kurt Bell. Again, this time with him exploring abandoned Japan. He talks about a time when he was in the middle of a bamboo forest. He saw an unnatural shadow moving through there. It was so well caught on film, in fact, that you can see him actually leave his spot that he's sitting at. Let's take a look. Now, I know some of you might think as I research and make these different stories, I am immune to all the different creepiness that I stare at on the screen each day on my computer, or the different novels, books, and weirdness that I explore through our local libraries. Well, unfortunately, I am not. These next two stories deal with some creepy dreams that I had while making this exact episode. In it, you'll see the different realms I explore as far as my own head trips within the dreams that are made up from the images I look at. In a few of these, you might catch some of the similar pictures and images and creatures and obake and yurei that I've talked about in past episodes, caught in some of these nightmare worlds that my own mind has created. Let's take a look together. The first dream I've had is a very simple, very short, concise dream. I'm doing an interview in the middle of an abandoned apartment complex. The inside's totally gutted out. There's no electrical components. There's no windows. Even the floors have been ripped out. A homeless person couldn't live in this place. It's so ghetto looking. There's spray paint all over the walls. Possibly it could be a set for a Silent Hill movie. It's really creepy looking. Now, I'm not only narrating the tradition and history behind this apartment, something I totally can't hear because it's muffled out through some sort of filter, but I'm also the person videotaping myself from the other side of the camera. I'm looking through the viewfinder, and my entire frame of myself is through the viewfinder of this camera. Now, as I'm videotaping myself talking, I notice a blurry oval type shape starts to come over my face, and so I ask myself to stop narrating. I take down the camera, I take a look at it and confirm that this has definitely happened and messed up this part of the film. We gotta do a second take. I take the camera, I put it back up, I start filming again, and this time another weird thing happens. A red line shows up across my neck. Now, I'm pretty sure this is from the camera. This isn't actually happening. My face isn't being cut off or something gory like that. But then tiny little red specks, little tiny, not blood drops, but they almost look like red mercury drops, start to wiggle across the camera's lens, slowly, messing up the film one more time. I take the camera down one more time, I look at it, I confirm that once again it's been messed up. I look at myself normally, I don't have anything wrong with me, so it must totally be the camera. I pick it up one more time, and this time when I start filming, my head and my neck have actually separated. Now, it's not like in a super gory, like ripped the vertebrae out of my back, like strands of organs and stuff hanging down. It's just a clean cut. And my head is actually only possibly separated about like an inch from the rest of my neck. And it's just kind of floating there. And I'm still talking and I'm still doing the interview. I think, oh my god, what the hell's going wrong with this camera again? I take it down, I pull it away, and there's my body on the floor with my head disconnected from my neck and I'm dead. So, pretty creepy. I think the reason that I'm the narrator and the person videotaping is because that's how I actually make my videos. Anyway, let's move on to the next creepy dream I had.
My other dream came to me last Wednesday night while researching this very episode. Like most dreams, it was only about 10 to 15 minutes long, but it felt like ages. It began with my wife and I moving our belongings into a giant rural house. Aesthetically, it was a beautiful house, and it commanded a very strong sense of Japanese style and architecture. Inside the house, a few pieces of minimalist Japanese furniture had been left over by the past owners. Strangely, all the furniture appeared completely untouched, even covered in plastic and totally dusty, as though they had never been used. The dream cut to a point in time where my family and I had lived in the house a couple of weeks. An air of anxiety hung around us now. My wife wouldn't talk to me and stayed at work for long hours. My sons and even my pet cat had become super aggressive and were constantly acting out, wrecking the house, smashing my wife's and I's belongings, no matter how much we protested, scolded, or punished them. Soon, strange deformed shadows, moving at odd angles and in an unsettling manner, began to crawl around the walls, like jittery stop-motion animation figures. Soon after, random objects started hovering upside down in the house, and then all out floating and shooting across the air. The dream world progressed at a wild pace. The shadows had become screaming ghosts, running through my house at 2:50 a.m. every night, waking me from my sleep within sleep. Looking over to my wife and checking my children, I found them sleeping soundly, acutely unaware of the revenants. Finally, I decided we would be leaving this restless haunt. Despite my wife's protests, That night, the two ghosts that haunted my house were revealed to me. One was a sumo wrestler, who was no corporal form or even an ethereal presence. Instead, he appeared only in a mirror, in the bathroom of my house. He is staring out at me with a look of near psychotic concentration. Constantly, he gorges himself on an insane amount of food, piling large spoonfuls of mabudon into his mouth over and over again, even as bits of his meal are brought back up through his overstuffed gut and out through his mouth, quivering down his lips and sliding down the sides of his face. The other ghost reveals herself just after. As the sumo fades out, in fades a bone-white woman, dressed in a kimono and obviously ready to become a geisha, putting on the many different types of makeup and the deep white foundation that a geisha wears. Obsessively, she keeps putting on layers and layers of makeup. At first, the process begins with her appearing flawless and beautiful, but gradually the layers of makeup reach a point of becoming preposterous, obscene even. Large clumps of geishan foundation distort and mar her beauty. An array of eyeshadow and lipstick turn the simple beauty of her symmetrical face into a disturbing, unbalanced visage, which could be best described as a mix between a clown and a nightmare. The whole time, she stares unblinking into the vanity mirror, just repeating one word over and over. Atashi, 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 over and over in a monotone pattern with no change in volume or pitch. Finally, she stopped speaking and applying gobs of makeup. She turned her head sideways so I couldn't view her from the back or the front. Everything was dead silent, and it seemed as though she was shuddering slightly and beginning to weep softly, though I heard no sound. Confused as to what was making her so upset, I approached the mirror tentatively, seeing if there was some angle that I could possibly reveal more of her story. She jerked without the sound of my movement, and her head shot back to an upright position. Her makeup was dripping off her face as though it had become the consistency of a gooey liquid. Her beautiful face was replaced by a heavily burnt semblance of pain and overly tight skin. Her mouth appeared to be trying to form words, but all that could come out were raspy whispers. Billowing smoke poured from her overextended jaw, and sizzling strands of saliva hung like thick, dripping gel sliding from her gullet. Pain rose from my stomach to a fevered pitch heat in my face, and I was jolted awake by the horrifying image. Gradually tearing myself from the alternate reality of the dream world, I gathered my still very muddy thoughts, and in my groggy state I wrote them down. I welcome any and all theories on what the stories or themes that were portrayed in my dream could possibly be. I look forward to reading your comments below.
Okay. I cannot breathe in this thing. Where is the zipper? Oh, how do all those psycho horror freaks in the movies wear a mask the whole time they're hunting people down? I can barely do it walking through my house. Anyway, until next time, I would just like to give a big shout out to all the people who donated stories onto jvloggers.com. You guys are awesome. Don't be afraid to put your name on there. I know these two were actually signed anonymous, but you can actually put your name, your plug, your advertisement, and I will do my best to give you a shout out. I would love to promote anything you're part of because you have already become a part of our show. We would like to help you too. On top of that, I'd like to give Kurt Bell, Softy Papa, a big shout out for another bunch of great found footage film looking stuff that's super creepy with all the haunting stories that go behind it. You always aim to please when you donate that stuff in. Anyway, until next time guys, feel free at any time to donate not just your stories, your pictures, your movies, your comics, your drawings. Everything is accepted on Osoroshii Saturday. We want to help you make everyone else get just as scared and creeped out as you were finding, writing, drawing, or making the different pieces of work you make as well. Until next time, I'm Unrested, and this is
Osoroshii Saturday.
We created the perfect soldier. We called him the Death Corps.
What's the matter?
I don't know. Did you hear anything?
I don't think so. Now I do.